this is what life is about. It's about coming together and celebrating the moment that we're in. And music's such a beautiful way of doing that.
Welcome to Leading Notes, where I talk with musicians who are leading the revitalisation of social health in our communities. I'm your host, Melissa Forbes. Chris Blain has a passion for building community through singing, with a strong focus on breathing and harmony. He's the choir operations coordinator at Creativity Australia and the conductor of With One Voice Whitehorse. He's also the musical director of men's choir Men in Suits and the director of Melbourne Singing Events. He was a founding director of Vocal Australia, Australia's contemporary a cappella hub, and for many years was the operations manager at Muso Magic, where he ran music workshops in Indigenous communities around Australia. Chris performed with international a cappella group Suede for 20 years. These days, in addition to his choir work, he's a civil marriage celebrant, composer, producer, and very importantly, a Frisbee enthusiast. Chris Blain, welcome to Leading Notes.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. You make me sound so important, and it's lovely to reflect on all those beautiful things I've done over the years.
You are important, Chris, and we're going to explore all of those beautiful things in our conversation today. Listing out all of the things that you've done, it's really clear that you've had this love affair with singing for a long time, either as a performer yourself or leading others with the various groups that you work with. What keeps you singing?
That's a great question. And, I know a lot of the people in my industry knew right from the get-go that singing was that thing. For a lot of people, a familiar story is it was the safe place I could go. And for me, I was a sporty kid, and sport was my community. It was my endorphins. It was my it was my social thing. And music was this little secret thing I did on the side. I was a boy soprano in a prominent Australian boys choir, and I did that because my brothers did it. So it actually took me many, many years to untangle that and see singing as something that I wanted to do. It was very much a skill that was bestowed upon me, and it came in handy over the years with music theatre and projects I wanted to start. I found it very easy to learn instruments because of all the great theory I was taught. Music wasn't my first thing until well into my 20s, where all of a sudden I found myself touring around the world and getting great opportunities to sing with the King Singers and, throughout the Midwest of America with the vocal consort. I spent many years, probably 20 years, singing at people, and now I'm trying to refocus that to singing with people. I'm finding much more of a safe and more of a why behind singing now that I understand the power it has with people. As an endorphin junkie, I used to get it from sports, and now I understand that music is a really safe, sustainable way to achieve the same thing and build communities.
Yeah, let's unpack that relationship shift, if you like, between singing at people and singing with people. That really interests me because I feel quite similar, in my own journey. Were you, when you were younger, of the kind of impression that there was only singing at people?
When you're brought up in a really high pressure musical environment, that the way your brain is wired is, I should be better. I need to learn how to read quicker. My intonation's not perfect. The whole framing of music is about excellence and this idea that there's a right and there's a wrong. And I don't know, it took me many years to go, none of it matters. And all the people I love are the ones that work that out really early. There's no one voice that we're all trying to achieve and aspire to in that sort of that operatic sense where we all train to get this perfect tone. It's like the reality is Tom Waits doesn't have a perfect tone, and yet people are drawn to him because of that rustic, human element of it. Everyone that sort of drifts to the top of the pack and really inspire people, they're generally the people that celebrate their flaws and they just love it. So I think for me, it was unpacking that and realizing that no one actually cares whether it's perfect or not. In a performing sense, I'd noticed that the mistakes, when everything fell apart, was the moments that the audience loved the most, because they knew they were at something real and they were at something live, and they could see this very human, organic thing happening. And I remember we used to sing Bohemian Rhapsody in my a cappella group, and we had a friend of ours who'd come to our shows, and after a few years he came and said, I preferred it when I didn't know whether you were going to get to the end or not, it felt edgy that the whole thing could fall apart at any minute. And now that you guys can do it backwards, it's like, it's not as exciting anymore. And I took a lot from that. I'm like, yeah, live music is about changing the way people feel. And you don't do that with excellence. You do that with heart and with soul and with, just connecting with people.
So why is it then, do you think, that so many experiences of music education are like those that you've described, where it's all about getting it right and there is a right way or a wrong way, or, really knowing your theory or whatever? Why is it that our music education can still be so focused on these things?
I think that's a deeper philosophical question about the whole purpose of our education system, which was designed to get humans and turn them into work units for, for the ruling class. And it's, that's how our education system's set up. It's about metrics, and it's about proving that the resources are spent and deliver. But I don't think you can do that with the arts. I don't have another solution, because you also can't filter people into schools with absolutely no desired outcome. And, then some kids miss out because some kids have great teachers that inspire them and some don't. And, how do we balance that? But, my wife's from Taiwan, which is like everything we're talking about, but jacked up to 11. It's like everyone learns piano or violin, but the moment they get to university, they stop and they never play again, because there's no time for that sort of thing. You've got to get on with your studies. There's a lot less time for play. I don't know. I think great music education in terms of music, would be that it's something that sits beside and around everything that we do. It opens our minds to mathematical concepts, to thematic artistic concepts, to language and the beauty of words. But I don't think it's something that we can constantly grade for each other.
Yeah, and it's so typical of, like, I guess, a Western style curriculum, that things are compartmentalised. And so I think that's where a lot of the problems lie, is, like you say, something like music should cut across everything. But it's seen as this standalone thing off to the side that only some people do because they're already good at it, which makes no sense, Yeah. But yeah, I'm just really interested in that kind of question around music education and what it prepares musicians to do, because it's such a common theme when speaking with people, that they have that experience of being prepared to be performers and to be the best and be excellent and all the rest of it. And then maybe it's a midlife crisis, Chris, for you and me and a few others, but we're like, hang on a minute, what are we doing here again? And why are we doing this?
Yeah. For me, it's like, what is there to gain in this moment other than joy and connection? Yeah. And the moment I realized that with music and my singing, I started going, hang on, you can apply this to every moment. Like, what is the point? We only get to do this once. Why are we, even when you're at work and you're having a meeting, it's like, it doesn't have to be an awful meeting. This moment only happens once. We could smile at each other. We could stretch. Yeah. We could breathe deeper. There's always a way to make the moment better. Back to education, I've got to be honest, I'm a 44-year-old man, and, they say men's brains don't develop till 25. You don't get a prefrontal cortex or, really understand the word. I reckon it was later for me. And if you gave me the opportunity at 16 to be just like, yeah, music should just be, happy, I don't know that would have worked for me. I was the third of three boys. My whole world revolved around just looking at what my brothers were doing and make sure I tried to do it a bit better than they did. the actual deep learning and the why behind it didn't come into well into my 30s. And so that actual rigid structure of education of just like dragging me along and giving me a yardstick and whatever, I think it was kind of essential to get me off the couch and do something. Otherwise, I just would have played basketball the whole time. So that's why I say I don't, it's fine at this end of my life with the things I know now to be able to sit in this place of joy, but I didn't have the capacity to do it when I was young. And so maybe education is about just setting up so we make sure we learn something so we don't waste these years. And when you get to the end of it, maybe we'll all come to some bigger understanding later. I'm sure happy my parents pushed me into music education the way they did. I'm sure happy I went to boys choir and did piano so begrudgingly but at the end of it, when I picked up a guitar, I taught myself guitar in weeks, not years. So for all the torture they put me through, I'm eternally grateful. But I don't know that you could have made it less torturous at the time.
I don't know. I just wonder whether we undersell our young people in not having these kinds of conversations, when they're 16, 17, around thinking about what's actually really important to them and what they're interested in and what they value. I never had that conversation with anyone. And I feel that, I take on board what you're saying around the maturation of our brains and all the rest of it. But sometimes I feel like young people are more than capable of having those types of conversations, and we're just not giving them that opportunity.
Yeah, no, well said. And not everyone was as much of an idiot at 16 as I was. But, to attach, I'm sure we'll talk about community and, for me, community was just a given. It was a baseline. I had brothers around me the whole time. I had a family who were always there. I had heaps of friends. I had sport. I was never alone. It wasn't until my 30s when my wife we had to move to Warrnambool for 6 months. And, I wasn't doing much. I could do whatever. I went surfing every morning. I went for cups of tea and read the paper. And I discovered depression, really deep and dark depression that I couldn't put my finger on. But it was about community. It was about the fact that everything I was doing on my own. And I found it really difficult. So, you could talk to the younger me about community. In fact, I was already working in community spaces. I just didn't understand why people needed it because I'd never been without it. So to actually experience that loneliness, that isolation, and then to come back and go, oh, this is what the work I'm doing is about. And it's not to assume that everyone who comes to my choir is lonely. It's just, this is what life is about. It's about coming together and celebrating the moment that we're in. And music's such a beautiful way of doing that.
How do you describe yourself when you're working with a choir? Are you the choir director or are you the music leader, singing leader? What are you?
It's a great question. I really find that the power of words is, I wouldn't have believed myself a few years ago, but in my current role, we've got 25 conductors around Australia in our With One Voice network, and we've changed the language from conductors to community music facilitators. And because when you say conductor, what's in your head is this person who waves a baton and looks at scores and reads music and teaches. Whereas what we want in that network, in that particular network of choirs, it's like, okay, we're trying to achieve joy and connection. And what's in between that? The inability to read music stands in between that for a lot of people. They won't want to join choirs because they don't feel good enough. That person who told them they can't sing and they're not good at, we've all experienced, we all know being a conductor or a music facilitator is a psychological role as much as anything in convincing people they can. So that language for me, in Suede with my a cappella group, I was probably the musical director. In Men in Suits, I'm a conductor. I arrange music in 4 parts. I teach the parts and I conduct it. in With One Voice, I'm a community music facilitator, and it's just all about joy comes first. And if something's tricky, and there's a different way we do it, we'll do it a different way. We're still building towards this sense of achievement together, but not at the cost of, not at the cost of it not being great fun.
Just talk a little bit about With One Voice and what those groups are all about.
We're trying to inspire a movement of inclusive choirs. That means we invite people who perhaps don't feel welcome in other spaces, people with disabilities, people with neurodivergence, people who need a carer with them, people who can't read, people who can't see, even, some people who can't hear, certainly some people who can't hear pitch. I've come across plenty of them, and not to judge, it's like something I've realised, we all talk about how singing gives us endorphins and how singing together creates oxytocin, and, the science is all in. But I don't think you get any extra endorphins or oxytocin by being good. I don't think it's how it works. I think when the Collingwood Football Club put their arms around each other after a win and do that shouty, weird thing they do, I think they're getting the same buzz that we are in choir singing in harmony. I think it's breathing deeply together and slowly releasing the breath. It's connecting our emotions to our voice. It's having a voice that we let out into the world. So With One Voice is that it's just trying to remove all barriers to entry so that everyone can experience that beautiful thing that we know people can experience, and then supporting a network of conductors and volunteers to make that happen in a sustainable way. So we'll fund new choirs, but not if we don't think it'll last beyond 3 years. We want to create a safe place where we don't just sing together, we sing and then we sit down and we have a cuppa and some supper, and we leave space for, real human connection to happen, real friendships to blossom, real support networks to start happening. And I should say one of the things that I'm most proud about at the moment is that we're an organisation that was very looking at what we were building and putting our name on it, and we're turning that back around and saying, in fact, we run choirs at a loss mostly. It would be better if other people ran the choirs. We should support everyone as much as we can. So that's kind of our new mission in 2025, is just to, how can we support community music facilitators for there to be more of them and for them to do their job easier, and for everyone to understand how to remove those barriers to entry and make things more inclusive.
When you're working with a group and you have a member who, can't hear or can't see or has other kind of what would seem to be pretty substantial barriers to engaging, what sort of strategies do you use?
Well, because it's such a vast network, and we're not in the room at these choirs, so it's about setting some a knowledge bank. And conductors are wonderful, but the heart and soul of choirs is the committee. Most great conductors have a great committee behind them who's doing all of that. There's the soft skills, the calling people when they haven't been there a couple of weeks, noticing new faces, and to me that's where the real magic happens. So we train our volunteers through a series of what we call exchanges. We get as many of people as we can, and we bring up an issue. If it's accessibility, we bring up an issue and we sort of talk a bit about policy, but then we give all of our committees a chance to exchange their own experiences about it. So we might have a choir in the country that's never had someone with a disability, that doesn't have to think about that. But we have choirs in the city where it's imperative. We need wheelchair access. We need to make space for the carers who are there with our people, and so it's not just welcoming our members; it's welcoming the carers who come along with them as well. We've had people with sight issues, So we don't use sheet music. Whenever we have something, lyrics maybe up on a projector, we also make sure we teach by rote as well. So we're really clear about just being aware that if people can't read, that it's not a prerequisite, and that we'll repeat ourselves enough so that they can learn. There's so many examples. We had a wonderful girl, Beth, in our Melbourne choir for a while, who had severe cerebral palsy, and we put her in charge of the count-in. So she'd come up in her wheelchair at the front, and whenever we wanted to start a song, Beth would, it didn't really matter what time signature the song was or what tempo, Beth would yell out 1, 2, 3, 4, and everyone would start singing. And I guess when you remove yourself from this, we are on a path to excellence, and you come back to we are in a place of joy and connection, all of a sudden the tempo and the time signature, just the importance of it starts drifting away, and you're like, what's more important is to find a job for Beth that makes her feel awesome and included. And those little decisions along the way just changed the whole way I went about music, and made me think, yeah, it just doesn't matter. The song will start. We'll get there.
Yeah, and just, I guess, really getting that sense for each person that's in the group, what might they be able to contribute that helps them to feel like they're a valuable member of the group, like you've just done. You've given that example of Beth. It's so important, I think, for people to feel like they have the right to contribute to music in that way.
Yeah, and I think as facilitators, if you have neurodiverse people in your choir and they're talking or shouting out at inappropriate times, like you can lead how that goes. You can either be really annoyed by it or distracted by it, or you can weave it into what's going on, and that's sort of how my choir runs. I have a very loose plan of how things are going, and then everyone else contributes to that energy in the room. And there's no way I could work with that group and be fixed about the outcome that I wanted. It's so much better when I let go of that and just sort of go with the flow and let everyone chirp in.
But that's where your musical skill comes in too, because you've got the musical skills to shape the music around that, or sometimes to even use that to go in different directions that you weren't even considering.
Yeah. No, and look, I didn't. That's what I'm trying to help with training new facilitators, is saying I didn't have any of these skills when I started. I had a very set skill set in a cappella music. But now I can play guitar and piano, and if someone starts singing something, I can figure out what key they're singing and transpose. And it's all possible if you just keep doing things and you keep an open mind. I think the terrifying thing is most people think when they're out the front that they have to know everything. I wouldn't get anywhere if I had to know what I was talking about before I opened my mouth. And
as if you could know everything anyway.
Yeah. But again, if what's in your head is the moment you're trying to create, I used to think that our job as singers was to sing songs, and it's like, it's never about the song. It's about the moment you're creating. The song is just a vehicle. Now, I've sung Hallelujah with hundreds of different choirs, hundreds of different times, but it's always a different moment. And if you can see that, and it gets rid of the monotony, because you're not like, here we go again. It should always be different. You should be making eye contact with different people each time and having a different moment with everybody in the room. There's so much to gain from repetition. In that sense, you don't have to it doesn't always have to be new. It's going to be the same thing over and over again, but with the right framing, people understand, okay, there's something more for me to get out of this moment.
I've got the house to myself today. I've got the whole damn house to myself today. Last time it happened was before I went grey. All day my way. I'm gonna wear my undies round the house today.
Tell me about Men in Suits. So why do you think it's important for men to sing, and how does Men in Suits kind of facilitate that?
A great question. I feel so lucky to be in charge of a group of 40 something. I mean, for a start, they're all old enough to be my dad and older. We've got 80, like I think we've got an 83-year-old in the group. Probably the youngest is in his late 50s. But I have a network of 40 extra dads in my life who all care about me, all have a lifetime of advice and experience in different industries and stuff. I'm so lucky to work with that group. And everywhere I go, I can bring a whole bunch of enthusiastic male singers, which is the unicorn of the community music scene. I'm so blessed. And Men in Suits was handed to me by the wonderful Stephen Taberner, not directly from him, but he set up this premise of the group, which was the character of the group. And the character of the group is pointless grandeur. It's a character that these men can sit in that doesn't require them to wear, all black with a splash of pink, and to be fabulous, and it's a really safe place for men to sing without stepping outside of their comfort zone. And it's genius. So I inherited this idea, and from there I realized that there's all this room full of men who generally don't sing in community choirs. These aren't singing men. These are men who haven't found peace with community music, but they find peace there. It doesn't function because it excludes women. And in fact, something I'm really proud about is that it's this positive, it's positive masculinity. There's plenty of talk about toxic masculinity, but this is a group of men who take to the streets whenever we can and spread joy through music. Respectfully, then we go to the pub and we sing more songs in the pub. And if young women or young men want to come and join us, everyone's welcome in the circle. It feels like such a beautiful expression of something that's been missing in our culture since they put us in the boats to get here. And I say our culture, the English, the Welsh, the Irish, the Anglo tradition was men singing, and the men played rugby, and then they sung, and then they went to the pub and they sung songs with each other, and it got lost here. I think the power of Men in Suits is that character. It's this safe space where you're not asking men to be something other than what they are. And you provide a character so that they don't have to be thinking about how to perform. It's very prescriptive, and rather than a constant battle with choirs is to be more exuberant, more expressive, more connecting, all of these things that are quite terrifying as a performer, really. It's the absolute opposite. We don't respond to applause. We're too important for that. We don't smile during songs. We're not making jokes. We're singing very seriously about very ridiculous things. There's all these just little, we don't make fun of anybody else. We only ever make fun of ourselves. There's all these simple rules in place that create this amazing space for men to come together and sing. And yeah, we're touring to the UK this June for a couple of weeks, which will be, amazing opportunity for the guys, and teaming up with lots of men's singing groups from England, which will be amazing too.
Wow, that's great. So how do you get your members? Like, do they kind of bring friends along, and what are they hoping to get out of it when they join?
People join the group really organically. Generally, it's people we've met in a pub while we were singing who one of the guys will give them a card and say, you should come along. There's groups of people travelling 40 minutes and carpooling from all parts of Melbourne to get there. But the story I get is constantly the same, is at least once a month, somebody pulls me aside in a private moment and says, I just want you to know that this choir has changed my life. It's saved my marriage. It's saved my sanity. When men retire, men need community just as much as everyone else, but we're notoriously bad at actually doing anything about it or reaching out or picking up the phone. Like we're terrible. So there's just this awesome thing going on where we sing songs and then we go to the pub and we sing songs. It's safe, and people sort of they just find their way to the group, and then it changes their life in a really soft, non-confrontational way. They just notice they've got something to look forward to. They've got this community of new people in their life who they can talk to. And I mean, for me, it's like looking forward and seeing what my health's going to be like in 30 years. I watch as everyone's prostate goes and then everyone's knees are going, and, we get these waves of different operations that go through the group. But to have that support where you can talk about it and not, whilst you're having a beer and having a laugh, it's not serious. It's not a grief counselling session or anything. It's, it's just everything's done in a very nonchalant male kind of way, which, I really respect. I'm sure there's lots of people putting in a lot of effort behind the scenes, but for me, it seems really effortless and just, things happen when they need to happen. Nothing's being pushed or orchestrated, which is what every good organic community really should feel like.
I mean, you've spoken just now beautifully about the impact that the group has on the members, and you've also spoken about the same thing in relation to the With One Voice choirs. On a personal level, what does it mean to you to be involved in these types of groups?
Yeah, look, I guess over time it's dawned on me. I've got two little girls, 3 and 6. I've got lots of work. Life's really busy. The men in suits, that it's sort of switched over from being work to the realization of I see these people more than I see anyone else other than my family, because I've got a regular thing booked in every Thursday. My Tuesday night choir, same thing. That cup of tea and the supper after we sing is sacred to me. I've sat and watched so many connections be made. It becomes such a part of your life, and you realize that these are your people. You sort of started off being an orchestrator, and then after a while you realize you're just a little part in this community. I feel greatly... You're one of them. One of them, yeah. I feel greatly honoured, and I do try and express regularly that I don't take people's attention for granted. Like the fact that they listen to what I tell them to do for an hour each week is remarkable. Who am I to tell people what to do? I run a pub choir. I shouldn't say pub. I run a choir in a pub on a once a month. And same thing, there's just this community of people who keep coming back for more and keep subscribing to my channel. I feel greatly honoured that anyone wants to give me the time of day for an hour and then do all the wacky things I tell them to do, move like this, make these strange noises. But, it's a trust that you build up. And I guess after a while, people keep coming back for more because they feel great and they feel better than when they arrived. And that's the payoff, and I spend the rest of my time looking for ways to make them feel great and keep, watching how other people do things. I run community singing weekends and hire all the people that I want to see in action, and then I get to see them in action. I get to steal all their ideas too and make them my own, share them with other conductors. So on a personal level, yeah, something that, singing was this thing that I did. People kept sending me around the world and paying me money and clapping every few minutes. And, it was a lovely adventure, but sitting backstage afterwards, there was always this sense of like, why? What's this all about? Whereas all of a sudden I can take a group of people who don't know each other, who walk into a room feeling shy and protective, and with just a few words and a few little tricks, I can have them moving and dancing and singing, and most importantly, connecting with each other, breaking down these barriers. It really feels like a superpower, and not one that you're born with or you get from a a spider biting you or something. It's like anyone can do it. They're just little ideas.
Why do you think we need to be reminded about that? Where did it get forgotten?
Yeah, well, for a lot of us, it's that musical excellence thing that clouds it. I mean, my youth was absolutely teeming with cynicism, and I don't know where that comes from. It's a self-protection mechanism. But even as an a cappella singer, we would sing at lots of community festivals. And thinking back, I'm so ashamed that I'd do my bit and then I'd tag out. It's like I missed this great opportunity to sing with people. And maybe it comes from this self-protection of, I don't think I'm actually that good. I think I think people are probably onto me, eventually. And I don't want to be amongst the people in case they realize that I'm just like them. Maybe they'll stop paying me to sing to them if they realize that I'm just the same. I don't know where the cynicism came from, but, I had a cynicism for community music and, the common tropes of kumbaya. And, the funny thing is I am now the kumbaya man. I'm the guy with the guitar around the fire starting that song and, giggling my head off and watching everyone else join in. I don't know why I couldn't do that earlier.
Yeah. I mean, so it doesn't sound like you've got too many regrets, but if you could go back and tell that younger Chris something, is there a message that you could give that youngest version of yourself now?
I mean, it'd be different depending on the day you ask me, but my advice today to my younger self would be just lean towards joy. We think, I shouldn't say we, I used to think of life in these grand gestures of like, you want to become this, you got to do this big thing and to level up. The reality of life, I've got to where I am in absolutely no deliberate sense. I just started leaning towards the things that made me happier and away from the things that made me tired and grumpy and cynical. And there was no big grand gesture. The opportunities drifted my way and I leaned into them. I didn't try too hard. I've never prepared too hard for anything. I started realizing, as a singing teacher, the more I prepared, the less authentic the sessions seemed to be. And the more I could just be present with somebody and listen, the more we both got out of it. So it's the same with choirs. I don't go in with a big plan. I'm just trying to lean towards that joyous outcome. And that seems to be an easier way to get where you want to go, and a much more organic, and you take the time to smell the roses along the way and make the connections and notice all the people helping you. And I don't think you can do that when you're running towards a goal. I think you have to slow down and just lean and let gravity take you there.
Lean towards the joy. What a great perspective. That's great. Speaking of joy, what song makes you feel truly alive, Chris? And I know that's one of these ridiculous questions where you have to pick one song.
I mean, anytime I hear the song Walking in Memphis by Mark Cohen, that always gets me going. And, I realize it's a 4-chord song, but there's something beautiful about the piano arrangement. There's something tricky enough about that kind of upbeat piano arrangement where you're never quite sure where the beat is. There's enough big moments in there to build, and then quite, enough dynamic range. I don't really know what the song's about. It's all
doesn't
references to stuff that was beyond my era, but it doesn't matter. For today, that is my song that you could play and would always pique my interest and get me singing.
Chris Blain, thank you so much for making music that matters, and thank you for being my guest today on Leading Notes.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a delight, and I hope it's not the last time we get to chat about this stuff.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make sure to leave a review. I acknowledge that this podcast is produced on the lands of the Gayabal and Jarawar peoples of the Toowoomba region, and I pay my respect to all elders. Mark Schultes produced the original music for this podcast. Thanks for listening. Now go make music that matters.